heard as the course of that trial. Let's debate this with the journalist and author Harriet Sargent, with us here in the studio, and also James Bloodworth sitting next to her, who's from the political blog Left Foot Forward. Good afternoon to both of you. Many things have been written and said about Mick Philpott. Much more will be said, I'm sure, in the coming weeks. We know, for example, he clearly had no interest in getting a job, wasn't interested in going out to work, although was more than happy for the two women in his life to go out and take all their earnings. What does that tell us about welfare Britain, James?
I think Mr. Philpott is the exception rather than the rule. For example, he had 10 children. I think there's 190 families in the entire country with 10 children who are claiming benefits for all those children. The fact that there was a television show made about Mr. Philpott is testament to how unusual his lifestyle was, and the attempt to say that if he had a job he'd somehow be this respectable, upstanding member of society. I think that's quite absurd. He was an evil individual, a manipulative individual, and that's played out in his actions. If he hadn't been trying to milk the welfare system, he would have been trying to milk somewhere else or someone else for money.
Harriet, mercifully, there are very few people like this in the UK, aren't there?
Well, I think that's all very true, but I think there is a broader issue here. I mean, his crimes were driven by getting more money from the benefits. I mean, his crimes were driven because when his children left home, he lost £1,000 a month from this, and he wanted to get that money back. So the benefits were behind the reason for his crime. On the other hand, it does sort of raise a sort of wider issue, which is why, and this is something that somebody yesterday put to me, who is a low earner, who works with vulnerable children, earns £13,000–14,000. Why is he being taxed, he asked me, in order that Philpott can be in the top 2% of earners, which is what he was. I mean, he is getting the equivalent of £98,000 after tax.
Well, OK, I mean, there are several things there.
That is crazy.
There are several things there. The reason for setting the fire was not just about getting benefits. If you read the judge's comments here, it is quite clear that it was about Lisa Willis. She's very clear, the judge. You were obsessed with her. You wanted her back. You thought the only way to get her back was to get the children in the house, and therefore she would follow. That's very clear in the judge's summing up.
I haven't had time to read that.
And it's
but
about
I still
control.
think the wider issue stands is that, you know, why are low earners having to be taxed in order to keep someone in the top 2% of earners in this country? I mean, that is crazy.
Well, is there something there about changing the system? I'll ask both of you, that the issue is actually you're angry, other people might be angry because he made no effort to get a job. That can apply to lots of people who don't harm their children. But the issue is the system, and it's about tweaking the system because it's still an unusual case.
Yeah, I think this is a bizarre case to draw your conclusions from if you want to change the benefit system. Like I said, there's around 190 people in a country of 70 million that claim benefits for that many children. As the judge said in the case, Mr. Philpott had no moral compass. It wasn't anything to do with him being a recipient of state benefits. And if you look at the children were actually said to be quite healthy. And what is the alternative to take money from families that have a lot of children? Risks children slipping into poverty.
Would you like to see, for example, a cap? I mean, this idea has been mooted before. It's not original, but the idea that perhaps child benefit should only be given for the first 2 children or the first 3 children, and after that, the system says, if you want more than that, that's your choice, but we're not going to give you the money every week for them.
If you were talking about saving revenue, again, that would only save a very small amount because there's not that many families who do have that many children. And also, it seems, if it's about the state saving money, for example, tax avoidance costs the government 15 times as much as benefits. So, I mean, let's start at the top and then focus on the exceptional, absurd cases like this.
Well, I mean, even the cap that they're talking about is on 25,000. There's a lot of people earning much less than that who are being taxed in order to pay for that. And I don't think that their side of it is really being put here at all.
Isn't it dangerous, though, to make policy in any knee-jerk fashion on any topic?
Well, I think
nobody should be making policy off the back of one specific court case.
But this is well, I think there's if you look at the whole, I have spent quite a lot of time looking at the benefit system. This is one particularly horrific case that has made everyone discuss an issue that has been going on for quite some time. And if you look at the influence that the benefit system is having on a lot of people's behaviour, it's not having a great effect. I mean, we all want benefits to help the most vulnerable and to help all of us when we fall through the system. Briefly, what we don't want, and what Beveridge never envisaged, was a benefit system that kept people on benefits, trapped on benefits for generation after generation. That's not compassionate. I mean, I've interviewed an enormous number of young men all over the country. They don't want to be trapped on benefits, but they are.
Well, the two women were both had part-time jobs.
Well, that is another point. I mean, that is another whole issue, which is the amount of tax credits that are now being paid. For instance, I think one of the women was receiving, she's doing a cleaning job, which I think she probably got about £11,000, and then she was getting an extra £20,000 from the government on top of that. Well, that again is a crazy system, that we are using tax money to hide the fact that low-paid jobs don't pay enough, and that or to pay to landlords for housing benefit.
Is that a fair point?
Yeah, I think this is a point we agree on. But one of the things where there's George Osborne's come into the debate today, but earlier in the week there was talk of the government freezing or reducing the minimum wage. And one of the reasons there are tax credits and why they were brought in was because some jobs don't pay enough for people to maintain what's considered a reasonable standard of living. And measures such as freezing the minimum wage, I mean, we need to build more houses, for example, because rents are so high. And we need to see a living wage in lots of jobs so people can work and don't need to have their wages topped up by the state. It's poverty employers and landlords charging extortionate rents that are the cause of tax credits being so widespread.
Well, I just have to add that it's quite a lot of the poverty employers is the state. I mean, a lot of the tax credits go to people working for the state on very low wages.
When the hysteria dies down about this case eventually, will any good come out of it? Will there be a calm, rational, sensible debate about a poverty trap? Or does this sort of case only result in hysteria?
I think it can only result in hysteria because it's the exception. The idea that there's been no debate about benefits. We've been talking about benefits for the last year, and the government's just brought in a far-reaching welfare reform. Highlighting the most bizarre case and trying to draw conclusions about what most people's existence on benefits is like is plainly absurd. There's no relation to most people's lives for this man.
And Harriet, but isn't there more that can still be done at the top? It's always the people at the bottom who feel they are targeted. Let's all talk about Starbucks and big companies again that aren't paying tax. That's costing the country way more money, isn't it, than one man who doesn't want to go out and get a job? Well,
I think actually, if you look at the figures, the first amount, the thing that we spend money on is pensions, and the second after that is tax credits and benefits. So, I mean, we should be looking at this, and I think this is a horrendous case, but it has made people talk and made people look at the system, and that has to be good.
And we will be talking much more, I'm quite sure. Thank you for now, Harriet Sargent and James Bloodworth from Left Foot Forward. Thank you very much indeed. Thanks for being with us.